don't even know if I could hold them all up. I read this many physical books, which I love so much. Today I'm gonna do my July wrap up. It is the 30th. I typically film this on like the 1st, but I have to return my library books tomorrow, and I don't want to add in all those pictures because a lot of the physical books I did read this month were library books. So I'm just gonna do it today, and if I end up finishing anything today or tomorrow, then I'll just put in another clip. I don't know how many books I read this month because I stopped checking after like the second week, so let me react with you. Going on the story graph. Y'all should follow me on story graph, just saying. Oh my god. I read 21 books. Here are some stats. Let's get into be talking about these books. The first book I finished in July was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. It's very disturbing, and it's about how this woman in her 30s is reflecting upon this, trying to see herself as everyone else sees her, which is a victim, but she never really saw herself like such. It's a very upsetting book to read. It's very detailed in all of the graphic things that are in this book, and I felt empty reading it. This is some of the best writing I have read this year. I very much do like this author's writing, which is cool because this is a debut book, so they've already got that down. It's very beautiful, but it's also very accurate. Like, I was reading her chapters when she was 15, right? And I felt like I was reading from the voice of a 15-year-old, not someone who is trying to figure out what a 15-year-old sounds like. And I very much felt her voice developing over those years where we would see her growing up. I like how this ends too. It's very realistic, but it still kind of gives hope for our character. It's a heavy book. Then I read The Transatlantic Conspiracy by William Faulkner. Nope, I don't know where I got that name from. G.D. Faulkner. Oh shoot, this is like described as Murder on the Orient Express, but it's underwater, and there is a little bit of murder. It's on a train, and it is underwater, but it's not like complex like Murder on the Orient Express. It's more about this girl who's on this train because her dad asked her to be, because her dad is the owner of the train, and she's trying to just like exist because she's not rich per se. I mean, she's more so new money, but her friends in England are old money, and she doesn't really fit into society, so she has to deal with that kind of. That's what mainly the book is about. She meets these other people. Eventually someone gets murdered, and she doesn't believe the detective when he says he figured it out, so she tries to figure it out herself. It's short. It's a quick read too. There's even some pictures like this, for example. Super cute. I would recommend it too. I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5. The ending is wild, and I wish it was longer, or there was like more books and it wasn't just a standalone, because the ending, like the solving of all of this, right, is crazy. Next I read Barbary Station by R.E. Stearns, sci-fi book obviously, and this is about Ada and Iridian. They're girlfriends, love that, but they want to join this pirate crew on Barbary Station, and they do this whole like hijacking thing at the beginning to impress them, but when they actually get to Barbary Station, they find out that nobody has been able to leave because the AI turned against them. And the captain is like, I'll consider offering you a position if you could figure out this AI situation. I was very excited for this book. How can I not like the idea of this? Literally space pirates and gays, like, hello. I did not like this. I gave it 2 stars. Which is a very generous rating, because I took nothing from this book. It felt like a waste of time reading this because I took nothing. It was just very detailed, but all the details were very irrelevant. It didn't give me anything I wanted. It didn't give me characters, it didn't give me plot, it gave me explaining what all of the characters were doing, and I didn't care, because I didn't care about the characters, because there's no emotional descriptions in this. It's very much just the characters are as they are, with a little bit of a quirk, and that's it. So found family wasn't even there, even though that's literally what happens. Like, found family cute, but How do you do found family wrong? How do you mess up this badly? This is my biggest disappointment of the year so far. I read something way better after that, which was the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton, which is the first book in the Dangerous Damsels series. This is a historical romance series with a bit of fantasy. Actually, it's a lot of fantasy. That's kind of the point. In this book, our heroine only wants a place in the Wisteria Society, which is basically a group of lady pirates, and they're all like older women, and they're not pirates in the sense of the ocean. In this world, there are like flying houses, and there are wars and stuff, like pirate stuff. It's really fun, but she just wants a place in this society and the respect that would come with that. Our hero has been hired by this captain to kidnap our heroine. He also gets hired to kill her by our heroine's aunt. He's like basically playing both sides. This book was really fun. It is like the best pirate book I've ever read, and I don't think I've ever read any other pirate books, so I don't know how much of a statement that holds up, but it gave me everything I wanted. The characters were all very fun too, because you know, they're over exaggerated, so I liked that. And the romance, I felt the chemistry, it was there, the banter. I mean, all you gotta give me is banter and I'll accept the chemistry, so I very much felt the chemistry because it was a lot of good banter. And it was exciting from page 1 to the final page. Like, there was not an ounce of downtime, which was super good for like engagement, because it takes a lot to hold me into a story, right? That's why I put books down, because the story will start to slow down. But this book, it kept going. I gave this one a 4.25 out of 5. And then I reread Down Comes the Night by Alison Saps, which I read back in like March, I want to say. This is just like a gothic fantasy about this girl, Wren, who takes this job at this manor from Lord Lowry in another, I don't know what you would call it, another territory, another city, whatever, which is like neutral territory, and she takes this job to like take care of one of the servants who is dying, and she finds out that the servant is Hal Cavendish, who is a literal war criminal and an enemy to her kingdom. Yeah, there's a lot that happens. I listened to the audiobook this time, which was really nice. I love the narrator. She matched perfectly the vibe of the book, and she did all the accents for all the different kingdoms, so that was cool, like figuring out who was who. But I love this book. It is no surprise. This is just one of those ones that have all of my favorite elements that a gothic fantasy would have. So it has that rereadable quality, and I guarantee you this isn't the last time I'm going to reread this. And I finished off the Cruel Prince trilogy with The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing, second and third book. This one is my favorite book in the trilogy, and I guess I'll tell you I liked it because Jude was very much herself, very like being a girl boss as she is, you know. And I like the plot of this one. It connects to the first one a lot, so it makes sense. So I gave this one a 4-star, I think. And then Queen of Nothing, which I gave a 3.75. It is my least favorite, mainly because it feels a little disconnected from the other books. Stuff that was happening over this series wrapped up very quickly at the beginning of this book, and this plot very much felt specific to the book, which I don't really like, especially at the end of series, because it just feels like you're adding more pages. But we did still get to see Jude be a girl boss at the maximum capacity that she could be, which I liked, instead of like seeing her take her full potential at the end of the book, which typically happens in fantasy series. Like heroine or main characters will get what they want at the end of the book, and we don't actually get to see them experience this thing that they want. But Jude does this specific thing I'm talking about like halfway into the book, and so we actually get to see her live this life. It was also a really wholesome ending. It's so cute. So honestly, the series has no impact on me. Jude is one of my new favorite characters, but besides that, it was a cute series. I read Credence by Penelope Douglas. I had no idea what to read. That's kind of how it's been all month, which is why I was so surprised I read so much, because a lot of it was just me trying to decide what to read next, because I didn't know what to read. So I picked up Credence because dark romance, they know what to do. They know how to get you in the reading mood, and this one would not stop showing up on my timeline. So this is just about a teenage girl, a 17-year-old girl who goes to live with her uncle in the mountains in Colorado when her parents die. And she's a Hollywood gal, so it's a very different life. I think my review very much sums up what I think about this book. You know, in the moment, it was fun. I try not to think about it too much, because the more I think about it, the more I hate it. I will tell you, who I wanted to be Endgame ended up being Endgame. I really liked the setting, mainly because like in my wildest fantasies, I would live in a cabin in the woods in like Oregon. Then I read the Plated Prisoner series, which is so good, y'all. I'll talk about all of the books individually, I guess. I keep having to move back and forth. The first book is Gild. Our main character is Orin, and she is a woman of gold who is touched by King Midas. And she's kept in a gilded cage, and she ends up like losing her trust in Midas after he makes a decision she doesn't like. And the series goes from there. So the first book is pretty good. I gave it a 3.5, mainly because not a lot happened. It was a lot of like setup for what the world is and who our main character is and the situation that she's in. I very much do like this world too. It feels very classic, like a fairy tale world, like an Arthurian legend. And I like the way that Raven Kennedy talks about the world. She doesn't reveal everything when it comes up. She uses that to her advantage for the sake of like the plot, which I see her doing with one part of the world, and I have some theories about what the next arc of the series is going to be if she decides to write more than one more book. And she is able to do that because of the way she set that up perfectly, which I really like. But I love Orin. Oh my god, Midas is officially in my #1 spot for my most hated villain. He is actual piece of trash. Like, that is putting it very lightly. And I think a reason I hate Midas so much is because he's a main character in the book. Like, villains show up once or twice in a series, in a book, and you rarely get to see them except when they're being dramatic. But Midas is a legit main character. He shows up constantly throughout the series, or at least in books 1 and 3. And so you just get to see him being trash. So I hate him with a burning passion. Glint is the next one. I give this one 4 stars. I like this one. This one makes it obvious that the series is based in Orin's character growth versus like an actual plot. Because the plot in this one, that is the plot in that kind of is a plot in the entire series, is very irrelevant to what's actually happening. We get another perspective in this, which is Queen Melina's, and I did not care about her chapters at all because they held no relevance to what was happening to Orin. So I didn't really care about her, but Orin. We see her grow in this book. And there's a bit of found family. There's a bit of found family in this one, which I really liked. And the ending had me stressed out. Is this the one that I cried in? No, it was book 3. Yeah, it was book 3. Okay, anyways. This one was really good. And then book 3 is Gleam. This one's another one that's very much like one setting, which I like that kind of thing because it focuses more on the characters and the plot versus like trying to reestablish what the world is, which is really fun. But this one is so good. I give it a 4.5. We get to spend time with all the characters, and especially King Midas, who gets a perspective in this book. It's a crime. It's a crime that had to happen. And Orin is being her best self in this book. I love her so much in this one. The romance, it's slow. It's so slow, and it's so worth it. And this is the one that I cried in because it was so upsetting. It's so upsetting what happened. I cried actually a couple of times, but I highly recommend this series. Then I read Blood on the Tracks Volume 8, which I assume is Volume 8. I don't know, I read it online and I look up like how many are in each volume. I give it a 3.75. I don't really have any thoughts about this series that are like new. It's still crazy. It's still a lot of like back and forth. I don't know. And then I listened to All Systems Red, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. Audiobooks are obviously very short because they're novellas. I'm quite forgetting what this one's about, but I do like Murderbot as a character, and I like kind of where the series is heading, with this like existential crisis that this robot is having. And the ends made me kind of emo. The Tree Dragon Society, which is by Kay O'Neill, and this is just like a really short children's graphic novel. It was adorable, super cute. I love the art style. I love the way the narrative went. Then I read This Place, yes, 150 Years Retold, edited, no, with a foreword by Alicia Elliott. And this is a graphic novel short story collection with 10 stories from Indigenous authors that kind of like talk about Indigenous culture and history. So it says, beautifully illustrated, these 10 stories are an emotional and enlightening journey through Indigenous wonderworks, serial killings, psychic battles, and time travel. See how Indigenous peoples have survived a post-apocalyptic world since contact. So each story is very different with very different art. There you go. And this was super interesting. I really loved seeing all the different stories, types of stories and artwork. Very much a range of like talking about a certain issue to like talking about something more cultural. Favorite story was the one about the Wendigo, and also the one about, I think it was about residential schools. That one was very upsetting. Then I read The Helion's Waltz, which was an arc, and this is the third and final book in the Feminine Pursuits series, which is a historical sapphic romance series. And this one was really short. Our first heroine is somebody who's just moved to, you know, whatever city they're in, and they're trying to escape this kind of debt that they had in their past city because this guy swindled her and her family. And she ends up trying to stop our second heroine from swindling this other person because she like despises it now. And the second heroine is like trying to distract her from like not stopping her and her swindle. So, you know, romance. This one was fun. It has another like insta-love thing where they get together very quickly, which is nice because then it gives time for them to focus on the plot of the story, which is like, you know, the swindle. And there's a reason behind the swindle. It's not so as devious as I was probably hoping it was. There was a reason that she and this other woman were like swindling this guy. You know, moral justice. And I liked the dynamic between our two heroines. And I give it a 3.5. Probably my least favorite in the series, but it definitely is the most fun. Yeah, so excited to talk about this one. I read Ace of Spades by Frida Abika Gimetti. I got this from the library because I just needed to read it as soon as possible, and I saw that they had a copy, which was super cool. It's at the specific branch that I go to. Obviously, this is one that everyone's excited for. It's a dark academia. I definitely would categorize that as it because it very much comments on academia. And we have our two main characters, Devon and Chiamaka, and they're the only two black students at this really elite high school with all these like rich white people. They start getting targeted by Aces, who is kind of like a gossip girl. Oh my god, did I put that on my face? They are two very different people. Chiamaka very much fits in better at this school because she's also rich, and she's basically Blair Waldorf, so everyone fears and respects her. And Devon is a scholarship kid and he stays in the shadows. So these two very unlikely people who would like otherwise never talk to each other have to come together to try and figure out why the heck this Aces person is trying to ruin their lives. Farida wrote the characters to be a little bit naive on purpose because she's trying to establish that these characters had a false sense of security at this school, and so it's harder for them to like accept why it might be possible as to why Aces is targeting them, which is interesting to read from because even when Devon's friend like suggests that it's racism, he's still a little bit hesitant even if he is the one that's more likely to accept a theory as such. This book is very upsetting to read. I think people talk way too lightly about this book. Literally they get profiled at the beginning of this book for like every chapter. I don't know, it was just interesting to read this knowing exactly what I was going into and then figuring everything out very quickly because Somebody said Get Out is a very accurate description of what this is, and so obviously I'm like reading the beginning of this book and I immediately figure out what's happening because it seems pretty obvious to me. But it's not obvious to the characters because, like I mentioned earlier, they have a false sense of security. Generally though, I think this is really well paced and really well written for a debut, and I liked how everything resolved because they're still teenagers. I mean, they don't really have that much power to stop what is happening, especially with how intense it is. Next, okay, I read 1984 by George L. Orwell. I had to read this for school, which is why I read this, because otherwise I would have never read it. I'm not a dystopian person, and Orwell really said, yeah, I'm gonna remind you why you're not a dystopian person. So, do I describe to you the plot of this? This is basically, okay, our main character is Winston, and he's starting to question his society. He believes he has allies, and so it kind of goes from there. Orwell really said, you know what, I'm depressed, so you're gonna be depressed too, and ended this book. I don't like how this book ended. I know why he did it, but I don't like it. Doesn't mean I have to like it, because I don't. But for the rest of the book, I would say this is like actually a really solid book. He explains everything nicely. Like, it doesn't feel like he's just dumping all this info on you. It flows nicely, and it is the point of the story for us to just learn about what this society is. And there's not really much plot either. It's just Winston trying to figure life out. But I would recommend this one. Not if you are already depressed. Hello. It's very upsetting to finish two upsetting books, one right after the other. For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. This is about Belmont High and these series of events that end up happening. And at the center of it all is Teddy, who's a teacher there. He's Teacher of the Year. And he is willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that his students are the best. Teddy is an unlikable character, not because he's a possible murderer, but because he's just a terrible person. He's arrogant, self-absorbed, he treats people like trash because he thinks he's better than everyone. And he kind of has this like righteous mindset where he's like, okay, like, I'm not as rich as everyone else around me, but I'm still morally better than them all because I don't buy my way out of things, I don't do this and this, and I don't think I'm better than everyone else. This man has no self-awareness. He has no self-awareness, I'm telling you, and I hate him so much. This book is incredibly frustrating to read simply because of Teddy as a student, because Teddy really makes you rethink putting your trust in somebody else controlling your grade. This man is crazy. This man is insane. This isn't just from Teddy's perspective though. We also have other characters. So at the beginning of the book, it's Teddy, Sonia, and Zach. Sonia's another teacher. Zach's a student that Teddy hates. And eventually there's other perspectives too. Everyone is flawed. So Teddy is the most insane, but all of the other characters aren't as innocent. Like, there's no one person that you could be rooting for. This book doesn't have an overall plot. It's very much playing scene by scene. So like, we're seeing these things happen and then another thing happen. Teddy not solving these things correctly because he solves his problems by creating more problems. So I gave this one a 3.75 out of 5. I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty fun, pretty quirky. I like the writing. Next I had finished Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thor, which is a young adult sci-fi about these three characters from very different backgrounds who eventually have to come together to take down a common enemy who is the Commissioner. This one was really fun. I loved this one. It's a very light sci-fi, meaning there's not a lot of high stakes. I think because the only sci-fi I've ever read before this was, or has been, adult sci-fi, and adult sci-fi is intense, like really intense, but this is just fun. I really loved all the characters. They're so, like, I wrote in my review, smile worthy, because, you know, they're just the type of characters that you would love. And I like how this very much feels like an entire, I don't know, like an entire plot, right? Because this is a standalone, so everything has to happen in these 400 pages, and I feel like there's a beginning, and there's a middle, and there's an end. And this has really beautiful writing as well. Like, if I was annotating this, the quotes I would mainly be annotating are the quotes between our two female characters. Their relationship was delivering lines, and I was in love. Like, they were in love. Oh, and then another thing I wanted to mention is the characters actually feel like teenagers in this book. They sounded like teenagers. They acted like teenagers. I gave that one 4 stars. And then I read Passing Strange by Ellen Klages. This was a tour novella about these 6 women. Sorry, it's very hot. About these 6 women in 1940 San Francisco who are just living life, but it mainly focuses on the relationship between these 2 women. I was about to tell you who they were, but nah, it's a kind of a reveal. It's kind of a reveal for one of the characters. Ellen really reminds you that homophobia and racism exist in 1940 San Francisco, which is the point of the book. I knew that going in. It's still a little bit too blunt for me. I gave this one a 3.75 just because I really like the relationship. I have The Return of the Sorceress by SMG, Sylvia Morena Garcia. This is a novella she just released at the beginning of July, and so this was an arc too. And it's only 95 pages, so it's very short. But our main character, Yalxi, has a mission to get revenge on this guy who stole this diamond from her and took her power. It feels like a moment versus like an entire journey, because our main character already knows what she wants to do and she doesn't have to figure it out. So she's just doing the thing. I love her as a character because she's very strong, very reckless too. Like, she has this very vengeful mindset, and I was interested to see if SMG was going to take that to the end and if she was going to be that same way. I wish there's a little bit more pages to explain her decision that she ended up making at the end, because it felt very sudden. But besides that, she very much packed what needed to be packed into these 95 pages. Like, it was a story. It was a nice short story. And I really like the world and the magic in this. There's sorcerers in this world, and the world feels very vivid. I love the descriptions. I don't know. I would like a full-length novel.
This is like taking the editing fit to a whole nother level, because I literally am just in my pajamas. I also read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric La Roca, which is like a really short horror novella, and I also keep seeing this on my timeline. I am very easily influenced, if you couldn't tell. I mainly read this because it features 2 queer women, and it's also in the style of like emails and instant messenger, which is like super cool. Ended up giving it like 4 stars. I just really liked it because I like seeing queer people exist in stories like this. Definitely very disturbing, as everyone says, in both like a literal sense of body horror, but also psychologically, and I think the psychological part is what got me more. I don't really understand why there's a solid group of people that despise this book. I also finished Saga Book 3. I am in pain. I gave it 5 stars because I really don't have any negative thoughts about it. It's a really solid last 3 volumes, and I kind of figure that I really like the way that they tell the story, because they don't tell you or they don't show you everything. They kind of will skip ahead if something's irrelevant, and they trust the reader to trust them.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed me talking about all of these books, and I will see you next time. Bye.